Welcome to the bar, come on and pull up a seat and open up your Bible, what a wonderful feast. The living bread, and we're discussing what it means for the streets, the inner cities and the burbs, and every person we meet. It's where we challenge worldviews that we hear from world news. In light of the scripture, we are here to serve you. We're your source for resources to help you on your way as you battle mean forces. This is for the people who can see the importance of sound theology and the scripture that support it. And this is for the truth lovers, biblically reforming, preaching Christ to the nations. Yeah, welcome to the modern Reformation. Yeah,
the bar, biblical and reformed.
Welcome everybody to the bar. It's your boy Dwayne in the building, right back in here another Tuesday. Super excited as always, be coming through your speakers, through your earbuds, wherever you listen to the bar. We're grateful that you're listening. And I love to start every show by thanking the listeners. You guys know that I love you guys. I appreciate all you do for the Bar Podcast. And now, finally, we have a way that you can support the Bar Podcast. We have exclusive content with the small subscription of $5 a month. You can get episodes before they come out. You can get access to our Facebook page, get some lives from me and direct contact with me if you want that. And we also have ways you can donate directly to the podcast. So we're excited about that. And like I do every week, I bring in awesome guests. Big hat tip and shout out to Ligonier Ministries and my brother Nathan. Those that listen to the bar know how much I love Ligonier and everything they have going on, and we've always partnered since the beginning. And when Nathan reached out to me about what they had coming, I was so excited. I said, please send me somebody I can interview. And so this week's awesome guest is someone that I can interview dealing with what they have coming new. And I know I'm talking real mysteriously, but we'll get into it. I have on none other than my brother Barry. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Dwayne. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Yes, sir. So Barry, first, man, introduce yourself to my listeners. Tell whether you want to share, whether it's personal, professional. You got the floor to do that right here.
All right. Well, I am a former actor and comedian turned writer, turned documentary presenter, turned podcast host. I think that just about covers it. Mm-hmm. Honestly, Dwayne, I don't know whether that's just because I'm afraid of commitment or what, but that is that's basically my CV in a nutshell. My story going back a bit further is that I got converted my first year at university. So this is back in 1992 now. Mm-hmm. And I was only going to church at the time because the girl I was dating then went to church. Mm-hmm. But I got a lot more than I bargained for because the student worker there is a guy called Tony Jones. And he asked if I wanted to read the Bible with him. And I thought he just seemed a bit weird and a bit lonely. So I said, yeah, sure, no problem. And as we read through the Gospels together, I met Jesus. So that was back in 1992. Fast forward 25 years and I started making a documentary on the life of Martin Luther with a friend of mine, Stephen McCaskill, who's a Canadian filmmaker. And I think that documentary put me on the radar at Ligonier Ministries. And I started presenting a podcast for them called Simply Put, which is still going. And then they took me on as supervising producer. And so my job is basically writing, devising, producing podcasts. And that's why I'm working on this brand new podcast that we're going to talk about called Luther in Real Time, which is launching on October the 10th. And we're super excited about it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, we're going to talk off the air because my listeners know my passion about podcasting, man. And I already got a relationship with Ligonier. So those that are listening, Chris, I'm just kidding. I'm going to send you my resume, Barry. I ain't even lying.
That's what you got to do, man. Listen, if they take me on, they would certainly take you on. I can't see a problem with that.
Sounds good, man. So, man, I want to kind of rewind back, man. You fast forward on me after your conversion, because you talked about the different facets, writer, comedian, things like that. Obviously you're not from Florida.
You noticed? Okay. I thought I was hiding it pretty well.
Well, not quite, man. Okay. Not quite. I'm gonna ask Nathan, is that a requirement? Because I think I can drum up a nice little accent if I need to.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me a little bit about that transition towards Ligonier, because like I said, I have utmost respect for them and all of that. So tell me a little bit about that journey. Then we'll get into the podcast a little bit.
Yeah. Well, so the fast forward bit, the 25 years, basically I co-ran a theatre company until around about 2000, 2001. And at about that time, the Minister for Evangelism at the church that I was attending, which was All Souls Langham Place in London, which is where John Stott was rector emeritus for many years. Rico Tice was the Minister for Evangelism there, and he said, hey, do you want to work on this thing I'm doing called Christianity Explored? And so I ended up actually co-founding Christianity Explored Ministries with him, and we did that for 20 years. But then things kind of changed at the end of that for various reasons. But one of the big reasons was I got married. I fell in love with an American gal who was Florida born. And so I understand from all of the books that I read about marriage that one of the best things you can do for your marriage is actually live in the same place as the person you're married to. So I decided to move to Florida, where I was given to understand that the weather is a lot better than it is in London. So that seemed like a good deal. And I did that. Let's see, that would have been around about sort of early 2006. And so at that time, although of course I'd heard of Ligonier Ministries, the penny didn't really drop. I didn't really realize that, of course, they're just down the road from where we're now living. And that was when I think a friend of mine who was at church with me at Christ Church Daytona, Christ Community Church, I think mentioned me to Chris Larson, and I think they'd already seen the Luther documentary. And so they started thinking, well, if this guy's over here from London, he's going to be here for the long haul, maybe we can do him a favor and keep him in gainful employment. So I think that was the connection, as far as I know, Dwayne. I think that's how it works.
Okay. All right. No, that is awesome, man. I appreciate you putting some meat on the bones, as we say down here in the South.
Yeah.
So, man, tell me about this podcast that's about to release this month. Because when I heard the trailer, man, I immediately thought, like, wow, this is, because I have a lot of friends that are church history nerds and whatever. They love it, and I get down with it too. But just tell me about, I guess, the thought process. Is this kind of an offspring of the documentary, or what were you thinking when you started putting this together?
Well, this is a completely new thing. And actually, this was an idea that grew out of Chris Larson, who you just mentioned, who heads up Ligonier. He is a huge, I don't know if you know this, but he is a huge NASA buff. Wow. And he had been, he's all about the moon landings and stuff. In fact, if you really want to wind him up, just pretend that you think the moon landings were fake.
That's basically the best thing to do in a few minutes.
Yeah, next time you speak to him. And he'd been listening to this really amazing BBC podcast called 13 Minutes to the Moon, all about the moon landings. And providentially, I'd also been listening to it and been really impressed by what they were doing to take a ton of dense technical information, but to make it feel really dramatic and compelling. And Chris wondered if we could, what if we could produce something in a similar format, but tie it into the 500th anniversary of Luther's Here I Stand speech and all the events running up to it. And a couple of years previously, Dirk Naves, who I work with at Ligonier, also had an idea about publishing a real-time Luther blog with posts published 500 years after the events described. So at that point, we started using the working title Luther in Real Time for the podcast, and it just stuck. So the basic idea is that each one of the episodes, the first one's on October the 10th, and each one of the episodes is released exactly 500 years to the day after the events described.
Wow.
So what effectively you've got is you get to walk in Luther's shoes at the same pace that he would have been walking towards that fateful, epic moment of confrontation in April 1521 when he says, "Here I stand, I can do no other." And so that's really the shape of the podcast as a whole. Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. So I didn't know the depth of it. Like the whole concept in itself is great. The whole dramatic podcast thing. I think I told Nathan, I was like, man, this is a mix between murder mystery and and comic book. I was excited, man. So
yeah, man, that's the thing, because the stakes couldn't be higher. Stake is probably the wrong word, bad choice of word, because of course Luther was in severe danger of being burned at the stake at any given moment, and so this was the most extraordinary stand for truth with so much to lose. And, if you're a Hollywood screenwriter, the important thing is the stakes, right? How high are the stakes? And if you've got some high stakes, it makes for an incredibly dramatic story. And that's what we've got here, I think.
Yeah, no, that is amazing. That is so cool, man. So as far as overseeing it and putting it together, because I know that takes time and effort and all of that. What has been some of the response from the trailer? What was it, Friday when it came out? What has been some of the response so far that you've received?
Yeah, it's been huge. I mean, it's been uniform actually, which is unusual for things that I've been involved with. But this one's been great because I think the first person I played the trailer to was my wife, and I just put the headphones on her and I said, "Here, listen to this." Mm-hmm. And I'm watching her face as she's listening to it, and this great big grin just breaks out on her face. And then she just takes the headphones off her head at the end. She looks at me and goes, "That is amazing." Mm-hmm. Like, that's just amazing. And my wife she's pretty hard to please, I'll be honest. I mean, she's got high standards, that lady. Right. So it was really, I thought when she said that, I thought, Dwayne, we're onto something.
We're onto something.
Yeah, this has got to be good, right? So I'm really excited about that. Originally, our plan was to get a load of kind of academics in to sort of offer a commentary on what was going on. But then as we started putting the scripts together, we realized the story was so dramatic and so immersive. We just thought, well, why don't we just cut out the academics and just have Luther tell the story in his own words? We've got so many of Luther's words. He was he was a prolific author. He, even his conversations at the dinner table with his University of Wittenberg students were recorded. Mm-hmm. So we've got all of that material we can dig into. So all of the pieces were there. And then when you couple that with, it's a dream team, really. I'm working with Douglas Bond, who's a prolific writer of historical fiction. He knows how to get inside the heart of historical figures and, their psychology. You've got Rupert Wickham, who's just an amazing actor playing Martin Luther. Rob Jorgensen's doing the audio production, who's just award-winning and has been for sort of 20, 25 years. So it's all set up. All the pieces are in place. The only weak link, unfortunately, is the narrator, who's this British fool who's speaking over the top of all this stuff. But anyway, if you can overlook that, I think you'll enjoy it.
Man, no, that's funny, man. But it sounds like a star-studded cast. One of the things that I heard from my buddy Lee Jones, he's actually a podcaster on my network. And first thing he said when I let him listen to it, when I sent him the email that went out, first thing he said was like, "Dude, like, I love the accents; they're spot on." And it's funny you mentioned the weak link, and he was digging it, man. So there you go. So
that's funny.
I'm assuming you talk about walking in Luther's steps from then till I think you said April 21. Right. Just because that's the way my mind work, and I know how y'all are very tight-lipped, but I just want to ask, could this be the beginning of more like this?
It's been talked about, definitely.
Good.
On a personal level, I would love. What would it be like to do, I don't know, Spurgeon in real time or something like that? Who knows? Yeah, I'd love to do more. We'll just have to see how this goes and how people respond to it. And hopefully.
Awesome. Good deal. So one more question before we go to the break, because I think you mentioned that you, I guess, kind of started or helped with Simply Put. I don't think I've had anybody on here to talk about it, because I've had Steve Nichols came on talking about 5 minutes. I've had Chris Larson, Nathan, all those guys, but I don't think anybody talked about Simply Put. Could you maybe get into that right before the break, and then we'll take a quick break?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Simply Put I always say the elevator pitch for Simply Put is very simple. It's a short podcast about long words. So basically the idea is that over the space of 5 or 6 minutes, I try to explain a complicated biblical or theological concept, but I put it in words which hopefully everybody can grasp, and use illustrations to apply it to your life, and hopefully a dash of humor as well, just to bring it all to life. So yeah, Simply Put comes out weekly, and I think, I've just about finished writing episode 100. Actually, that was last week.
Nice.
But in terms of release, I think we're up to probably around about episode 70. So there's plenty of stuff to binge if people are so led by the spirit to do so. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you plugging that in. I always love to expose my listeners to good resources, and everybody know I only have to say it, how I feel about Ligonier and their awesome resources. So I really appreciate that plug. So right here, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Justin from the If Songs Could Preach podcast. We transform solid worship songs into sermons. Come along with us as we discover great worship songs and talk about their theology and instrumentation. If songs could preach, this is how they would do it.
All right, we're back in here with my new friend Barry. He just don't know it yet, but I'm always friending my guys at Ligonier, man.
I called you Dwayne Johnson earlier.
You did.
You're not offended by that. It's very good of you to not take an umbrage, given that I referred to you as Dwayne Johnson earlier.
I told you, man. I look better, but he has more money. That's the difference, man. That's the difference. But no, that's funny, man. That's funny. So right here, man, on the back half of the show, we do what we call the bar signature questions. These are 3 questions I ask all of my guests, no matter who they are. And so the first signature bar question is, what kind of music do you listen to?
I guess the boring answer to that is the one that probably everybody says, which is, well, I listen to all kinds of things, which I do. But if I'm being honest, what really floats my boat is this is going to alienate all of your listeners, Dwayne, but I really enjoy weird electronic stuff. So Kraftwerk, Boards of Canada, New Order, Massive Attack, anything that involves a synthesizer, I'm big into. And I actually make electronic music for one of my podcasts, Cooper and Kerry Have Words. So that's I'm really kind of obsessed with that kind of stuff to a nerdy kind of degree, really.
Awesome. I love that. I love an answer I wasn't expecting. That's for sure. All right. So next signature bar question is, what book or books are you currently reading?
History in English Words by Owen Barfield. He was one of the Inklings guys alongside C.S. Lewis. It's a really great book. So it shows the history of words, the way that they change meaning over time, and it helps if you look at the way that words change meaning, it helps us to unlock history itself and holds up a mirror to why we are the way we are. So that's a great book. And I also recently finished a book called The Madness of Crowds by Douglas Murray, which is a book that tries to make sense of our current turmoil where it comes to things like gender and race and identity. He's not a Christian by any means, but there is a great deal in there I think that Christians would find themselves agreeing with. Plus, he begins by quoting G.K. Chesterton and then Nicki Minaj in that order. So if that's not a recommendation, I don't know what is.
Oh, man, I love it. Good deal. All right. Last signature bar question, which is going to be interesting. What podcasts or sermons do you listen to?
Honestly, I don't know about you, but I think if this lockdown has shown us anything, it's that listening to or watching sermons virtually it's just not the same as being there, right. Really. And to be honest, I've never really been a big fan of listening to sermons if I can't actually be there in person, because I just find I just get too distracted. You know what I mean? And but I do love podcasts. There's just obviously tons of good ones. I'd say Christian-wise, I'd recommend Alistair's Adversaria with Alistair Roberts. That's a really good one. Goes deep into theology. The B.A.R podcast, obviously, that goes without saying. Ask Ligonier with my friend Nathan Bingham is well worth checking out. You mentioned Nathan. That's really cool because people phone in questions. They get bite-sized answers from these real theological heavyweights. So that's good to listen to. I do enjoy the Just Thinking podcast, but those guys go really long, don't they? I mean, you need a long car journey for that one, but that's all good stuff. And then in terms of non-Christian podcasts, I'd say just one off the top of my head, Trigonometry is interesting. That's 2 British comedians interviewing the best authors and diving deep into news and culture. That usually has some really good insights in it. And then there's my own podcast. Am I allowed to, recommend my own podcast? I'm
Whatever,
not sure,
man. This is the bar.
Right.
Anything goes, man.
So that's you're being very indulgent. I appreciate that. But yeah, so I do a podcast with James Carey called Cooper and Carey Have Words, which has been going for a couple of years now, and is a lot of fun to do.
Cool, man. I didn't know anything about that. I'm glad you mentioned it. Now I'm a subscribe.
You're not the only one.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna subscribe, man. You put that out there. How long you been doing that one?
Well, Cooper and Carey Have Words has been since the end of 2017, I think.
Oh, okay.
Something like maybe 2018. It's been a couple of years, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on my show. This has been very, very, very fun. And I always like to kind of give my guests an opportunity to kind of close us out, man. Any words of encouragement, anything you want to leave the listeners, and then I guess shout out those, I guess the date whenever the Luther Real Time drops.
Yeah. Well, let me point people towards lutherinrealtime.com. That is a good place to go for information, or you can just go to your favorite podcast app and just search for Luther in Real Time, and you can subscribe and listen to the trailer there. Yeah. I think that's basically it.
All right. If not, Nathan, he'll straighten us out.
Yeah, that's right.
Good deal, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you again coming on the show, and this has been really fun. To the B.A.R listeners, appreciate you guys tuning in to the B.A.R podcast, your favorite podcast. Make sure you go to thebarpodcast.com, check out all the old episodes, as well as go to thebargear.com, pick up some B.A.R gear, and make sure you subscribe to the new, I call it Inside the B.A.R, exclusive content, new releases or releases before they're actually releases. You'll get access to those, as well as the Facebook group, and also some other free goodies in there. Until next time, you guys, God bless you, and we are out.